Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Jordan Schnitzer Museum of Art. For the Visiting Writer Series tonight, I'm Kristen Becker, the Curator of Education here. We're really, really appreciative to have this partnership with the Department of English and the Visiting Writer Series. These are some of our most valuable kind of collaborations and partnerships when we're sort of able to connect with other disciplines on campus. I think we can we're always enlightened by what we hear read here, what we hear being read, there we go, at these types of events, kind of casting new perspectives and new light on the works of art that are hanging in the museum. So we have 2 exhibitions on view. You might have noticed some of these artworks surrounding me in this gallery. There's more through the glass doors behind you. If you don't have time tonight, please come back and check out Anish Kapoor, Dissolving Margins, and this exhibition that you see in this room, Color Outside the Lines. There's a lot of fantastic work here. It will be up until right before spring break. So please come back if you'd like to enjoy the artwork. And now I'd like to welcome Cameron McGill for our introductions. Yeah, welcome, Cam.
Thanks, Kristen. How y'all doing? Yeah, this has been an eternal day. I appreciate all of our readers kind of spending the day on campus, coming to classes, and it was quite a nice day. It's good to see all of you. Thanks, Kristen. Always wonderful to have the museum host these events, and I kind of don't want to do them anywhere else. I will keep bothering you as long as your schedule permits. My name is Cameron. I co-direct the Visiting Writers Series, and on behalf of the series and my co-director Julian Ankney at WSU Vancouver, thanks for joining us this evening. Hello to those joining online. You'll get a chance to post some questions there later in the evening, and we'll get those sent to me through some sort of a device. We're excited to welcome authors Alexandra Teague, Thomas Dye, and Michael McGriff to WSU. WSU Pullman is located on the homelands of the Nimipu and the traditional homelands of the Palouse Band of indigenous peoples. We acknowledge their presence here since time immemorial. We view the land acknowledgement as a first but necessary step in our work to serve and honor our communities and our land grant mission here at WSU. The Visiting Writers Series is committed to honoring this acknowledgement by bringing to campus writers who are working at the top of their fields, whose voices, identities, stories, and perspectives enrich our communities, the minds and lives of our students, and our university as a whole. These events are made possible by many peoples. WSU Pullman and Vancouver English departments, the College of Arts and Sciences, Landescapes, the Jordan Schnitzer Museum of Art, the Provost Media Group for live streaming all of our events. And a special thank you to Katie and Bree and all the folks at Book People of Moscow for being our book selling partner at all these events. So before we introduce our first reader, I just want to say I'm extremely grateful both to Mike and Thomas and Alexander for joining us this evening. And I was telling some of my students earlier today that Mike and Alexander were my professors in graduate school at the University of Idaho's MFA in creative writing not too many years ago. And I owe them a debt of gratitude, not just for working with me on poems, but their guidance and friendship, for being generous writers themselves and teachers who relentlessly advocate for their current and former students. Some of you know what I'm talking about. Quite a few of you, I think, maybe. So thank you both. And Thomas, if you had been my teacher there, that would be addressed to you as well. A special thanks to you, Thomas, for that you didn't have to have me as a student. I'd like to welcome one of our 3 Visiting Writer Series interns, Elise Opheim, to introduce our first author of the evening. Elise?
All right, hello everyone, and thank you for joining us this evening to welcome all 3 of these talented authors to Washington State University. My name is Elise Opheim, and I've had the pleasure of being one of the Visiting Writers Series interns for this fall semester. I'm a senior here at WSU, and I'm pursuing a degree in creative writing. But, but despite this being my final year, I am just now taking poetry, which was where I was first introduced to Michael McGriff's work through his poem, Men Keep on Dying, written in memorial of fellow writer and friend, Dennis Johnson. It's a beautiful piece about art, artists, and death. And as someone who is just beginning to dabble in poetry and the lasting impacts of it, it's stuck with me ever since. Of course, his work spans far beyond that, and he's the author of 6 poetry collections: Inquest, which actually just came out today, Angel Sharpening Its Beak, Eternal Sentences, Early Hour, Home Burial, Dismantling the Hills. He is also the author of the short story collection, Our Secret Life in the Movies, which was co-authored with J.M. Tyree and selected as one of NPR's best books of the year. His other books include a translation of Tomas Transtromer's The Sorrow Gondola and an edition of David Weeville's To Build My Shadow a Fire, a selection of the Canadian poet's essential work. His writing has appeared in the New York Times, Book Forum, Poetry London, the Academy of American Poets, and the American Poetry Review. He is also, of course, a professor of English at the University of Idaho, where he serves as the director of the Creative Writing Program. Thank you, and please give a warm welcome to Michael McGriff.
Elise, thank you so much. Don't run off. I'm going to give you a copy of my book after the reading, and I signed it for you. Thank you very much. It's a delight to be here. Thanks to the museum and Kristen and Cameron and all those who made this reading possible, especially the interns and book people of Moscow. I'm going to read for 15 minutes and be a good citizen of the timer. Going to start off with 2 newer poems, newish, one very new poem and one newish poem. This poem is called Inversion, and I wrote it in part thinking about suffering and how that seems to be available in a maybe too large of a quantity in the past few years. And I thought, well, what if there wasn't any? So this is my aspirational poem, maybe an invocation for my own work here, which is going to be way bleaker than this poem. Inversion. There's no suffering among dandelions. In the way the corral gate swings open, or how the gears stay up late to keep the wrists of the dead company. And there's no suffering in silt or the word marsh, or in the quadratic equation, which scurries beneath the floorboards of my thought like a mouse drunk on plum wine. There's no suffering in the steam backlit and seared into the world at an early hour with the horse as its guide. And there's no suffering in leg bolts or U-joints, nor in the sexed-up shadows of grain elevators. There's no suffering in the verb itself, to suffer, which in my kin's tongue means charged by the sight of an owl, let loose from a barbed hook, return to the reservoir of the mind. Today, I'm a chemical emulsion that burns light onto paper, a 3-cent stamp honoring a woman whose name is cloth spread throughout a meadow or mortar setting up in a constant breeze. The mountain air takes a handful of memories from my chest, spreads them before me like pewter figurines until I feel like a tube of lipstick with an erotic name, or the long vowels in a wave's trough, all hum and echo. Friends, I'm both a keyhole in a star and the key chain to a young boy's neck. I'm the thistle and its bloom, father rack and pinion sun, gravel and its dust. And here before you now, I'm on a measure of consonants, gnawing the green roots from a blinded moon, where I say to hell with kings and jeweled blood, for in this kingdom suffering shall be, but never be invented. And, okay. I'm hedging on reading this poem because a bad thing happens to a dog in it. Apologies for dog lovers. I am one. But this chronicles my first job in which I was paid under the table as a kid to burn some tires and plywood and a dead dog. I'm reading this poem in part because it summons up the great painter Bruegel in the end. Permanent collection. So close your ears for 15 seconds if you don't want to hear about a dead dog. I know it's in bad taste to lean into loneliness the way this town leans into its lacquered hills, but I don't mind feeling like those wooden milk jugs at a carnival ring toss, white, chipped, and impossible, but also predictable, like grass, like anything that leans into the wind or teeters in place to end the day where it began. Whatever happened to the anvil-shaped cloud that hung above me in my 14th year as I, for $4.25 an hour in a side lot, burned sheets of delaminated plywood, a dead dog, roof shingles, and bald tires. None of this matters much, nor should it. The hills, the quick bursts of smoke, a kid who didn't think too far beyond lousy pay for lousy work. Still, I want to take you before the steel-belted radials I folded into the fire like black batter, because tires don't burn as much as they collapse into themselves, like a luxury hotel and casino detonated, cheaper to implode than repurpose. Besides, who doesn't mind a little spectacle? That smoke was an animal that had perfected the shape of the wind, which was too tempting not to stand in or disallow. But the actual animal, the dog that keeps running through the streets of your judgment, it remains a flourish, a metaphor so absolute, so tidy, that it must be covered in plywood and burned on the clock for a few taxable dollars. By someone so young, he now must be considered a child. The smoke remains, but also the temptation to stand in it, to breathe it in just a little, enough to feel the sharp edges and desperate wings of some future death. The first time I saw a Bruegel painting, I was a new father, and what drew me near was the coal smoke chuffing from the village houses and a man emptying what appeared to be a box of dead doves at the feet of the children huddled together in the new snow, while the others walked out onto the frozen lake, testing the edge, one step and then another, until a single child stood apart from the rest, hands above his head, as if he'd found the forbidden shoulders of a low cloud. I heard then, as now, the ice sing like bridge cables in the wind, even though it was not a Bruegel painting, just a reproduction, an echo, a way to stand before what's hidden or simply elsewhere, and also what is real. If you've ever seen a Bruegel painting, it's like seeing any famous painting you think you've seen. If you've picked up a mouse pad or a mug, you haven't seen it, but you feel like you have. And I was in Vienna, and it was so astonishing. There was this huge Bruegel painting, 6 feet tall, it felt like. And before the painting were maybe 8 or 10 Chinese artists who were there to reproduce the painting. And you could watch them in real time paint this amazingly surreal plane of perfectly reproduced Bruegel in front of Bruegel. And it just made me think, which is which, and what is real, and what does that mean? And I don't know why that was an image that seemed to summon itself when I was thinking about my first paid job, but such is the way. Anyway, a little poem for the museum. I have a new book out just today. It just came out. If you say. When I was a kid, right after high school, I read this book. Pablo Neruda, the great Chilean poet, Nobel laureate. His book, The Book of Questions, a book was published after he died. And as I was telling a class earlier today, it's stuck with me and become more resonant over the years, not just because it was one of the first books I ever read and loved, but because it was the final book written by someone who knew they were dying, someone who wrote countless poems, many of them polemical or didactic or political in nature, which are among the most dull of his poems. But this Book of Questions is a book that only asks the unanswerable. And I've been quite touched by that. I wrote a book in response to this book as a way to honor that reading experience. And also, just to satisfy my curiosity to see if I could also write a book only using sentences. So this book is called Inquest. It's a book-length poem cut up into about 56 sections, and I will read you a few of them with my old man reading glasses. Inquest. Was that the sound of my brother getting arrested? Or was it the moon collecting its debts from the Jimson weed? Perhaps it was the surf throwing itself into the jetty, failing to strike a blue spark. Lovely ghost, is that you at the end of the driveway, trying to convince the young deputy that a set of brass knuckles is only a paperweight? Or have I fallen asleep with the windows open, overhearing the thorn apples swap stories as the ocean shuffles its eternal deck of black cards in the last corner of summer? When you delivered a pallet of diapers to the women's shelter, did you notice the exquisite pen on the edge of the receptionist's desk? How many evenings have ended with a new couple arguing over the definition of parallax? Are those acetylene sparks on the floor, or a spilled pile of yellow toenail clippings? Is that steam or smoke rising from the field of bone-white cows? Why have the years conspired to bring my grandfather's hand tools into my garage? And why is it so exceptionally pleasing to oil those instruments whose names and functions I'll never learn? Is it true the government is run by a secret network of mushrooms? Does the rain shed its tail when trapped in a culvert? How many times must the ocean repeat itself? What if there's no difference between sheet music and a ransom note? And what if our neighbor's metal roof ticking in the sun makes the same noise as my mother dropping one glass bead after another into an empty beer can on the first anniversary of my brother's final disappearance? Why can't pneumatic be the name of a lost book in the Bible? Shouldn't the ripples on the lake move back toward the rock the child threw after being told not to? Don't the yellow birds in the cemetery realize their smoke breaks ended 5 minutes and 10 ceremonial flags ago? How does the origin myth begin that explains the stench of bears? Would I be here to write this had my father not enlisted for Vietnam and gotten stationed in Germany? Why are those wooden crutches and this bucket of pocket knives the only thing in the pawn shop that don't fill me with despair? Is the county dump the secret society we've been warned about on AM radio? Who among you ever tasted government cheese? Did the Ferris wheel originally spin on its side? Was it a flywheel in a machine the Blue Jays invented to mimic other machines? Does the rain ever dream it spent its whole life in a ditch? At what point did my father's hands get sewn onto my wrists? Is the ocean the only thing that doesn't believe a list has a final item? Does all this water mean the sky's doubling down on its bets? Can the way I feel about the stone jetty go down on my permanent record? Are the peacock's voices still made of charred floor joists and quicklime? Will these waves of dead grass be governed by the Port Authority or the ghosts of fish? Are those boys in the stubble field trying to reinstall a star in its socket? Or are those burning tires homegrown traps for the low-hanging angels? And on that book goes for however long, 56 pages. I'll read to you now a poem I'm delighted to have written because I wrote it for my friend Alexandra, who's quite a genius and can see into the matrix of form, structure, and prosody in a way that normal people simply cannot. She and Bob Wrigley, our colleague, are probably two of the most prosody-brained luminaries in our country, for my money. So I wrote this villanelle because I wanted to prove to myself I could write a poem that could be in form and have meter in it. So here it is, and I wrote it, and I am never writing anything else in form ever again. Burned for Alexandra. What's written goes hollow, long-toothed, and mean. The past is built by omission. It's the same vowel that's soaked in gasoline. We move beyond the facts, beyond the scene. We migrate at night like birds, no, like blood. What has teeth gets written hollow and mean. I adore the singed list of a crow's wing. I deny the charred matchstick of the known. I'm nothing but the smell of gasoline. Our hometown? The everything of nothing, where my mouth's black wing is pinned down and sewn to what's written, hollow, long-toothed, and mean. We lurk and siphon and laugh at the sting while others deny and deny what we know. We'll never lose the taste for gasoline. We are lean, we are boys with blind swinging fists, we are sand and gravel, we are home. What's written goes hollow, long-toothed, and mean. Nothing beats the pull of sweet gasoline. I like that one. I wrote it. I can't believe it. One and done. Okay, 45 seconds to go. This is my last poem. I wrote this poem. It's called 1995, the year I graduated from school, high school. I read this in the class earlier today. And bit of a bleak one to go out on, but I think it represents a lot of my years growing up in rural Oregon. 1995. Today is like yesterday. The courthouse fills up. We wait to be called before the judge. We learn of each other's crimes. We answer questions. The judge laughs at a woman. She stole a 3-pack of boys' underwear from Kmart. The electrician left his girlfriend's kid in the back of his car. He had to make a quick deposit at the bank. He left the windows cracked, but not enough for a hand to get in. He was only gone a few minutes. I drank too much and pissed against the bank's picture window. That was after my friend hanged himself. Maybe it was the same bank. Bodies became things they were never supposed to be. I agree to pick up trash on the side of the highway. I go back to work, moving boxes around in a walk-in freezer. Sometimes I turn out the lights and harmonize with the compressor. Someday, we'll colonize the moon. I wonder if it will have pioneer graveyards filled with the names of children, the ones who died at birth or never grew old enough to speak. Thank you so much.
This is a lot taller than me, but that's okay. Thank you for that. That was amazing. So first I want to say thank you for everyone coming out tonight, whether you're here or on YouTubes. Thank you for taking your time to come out. We got some really great writers today, so I'm glad you all get to experience that with us. My name is Taya. I'm a creative writing major. It's my senior year this year. And I am one of 3 of the interns for the Visiting Writers series. So I get the lovely opportunity to introduce Thomas Dye. Thomas recently published his first book, Take My Name But Say It Slow. It's a collection of essays about big things such as love, family, and identity. His pieces have appeared in Electric Literature, the Georgia Review, Long Reads, and more. Thomas holds an MFA from the University of Arizona and a PhD in American Studies from Brown University. Thomas is now an assistant professor of English at the University of Idaho. Without further ado, Thomas Dye.
Thank you. Thank you, Taya, for that introduction. And thank you, Cameron, and everyone who put this lovely event together. And thank you to everyone who's here, and especially my students who are here. I usually teach workshop at this time, and this is the time of the week that I honestly get to remind myself why I love essays and why I do what I do. I'm going to be reading from my book, which, as Taya said, is an essay collection, but I'm not going to read one entire essay. I am going to jump around a bit in the book and read a few different passages from different essays, and all of these passages are connected to like a different queer space or a space that felt queer to me in some way. Because I'm giving it to you without context, it may not make sense as a reading, but you can think of it as a map, and maybe it'll make more sense that way. And the first place on the map is Martin, Tennessee. I met my first boyfriend in a tiny college town not far from the Mississippi. We were both attending a summer camp called Governor's School, which ambitious high schoolers from Tennessee went through the motions of collegiate life. Let's call the boy John. He was a rower from Chattanooga, tall and athletic with a slightly disorganized face. I first saw John at a laundry room rave organized by one of my friends. MGMT's Kids was playing, a Party City light weakly strobing in one corner. I watched John dancing by the dryers with a crown of Dollar Tree glow sticks on his head and wanted him exactly like that. Sweaty tank top and sunburned arms, neon freckles on his face. The boys' dorm was full of rooms left unoccupied for the summer. Each looked identical to all the others, with a single slit window, a pair of wooden desks, spring-loaded mattresses, and a mirror on one wall. I remember the room's number, 109. I remember when John entered it, shutting the door behind him, how the air inside 109 shifted to accommodate his presence. That we'd soon walk out of that room, and after a few months' time out of each other's lives was already a given. The room would remain exactly as we'd found it, a passive receptacle for temporary tenants. Before we left, we strip-mined those walls of every feeling that we could. We examined each other's inches. We talked about what we saw. On the last night of camp, I remember John and I standing together in the middle of the room, naked, watching the two boys taking shape in the mirror. The taller one's arms wrapped around the shorter one's waist. Our two bodies in the mirror, a proof of concept. Nepal. After the trip ends, I try and recover all the beautiful whatevers. I return to the broken house on the hill and take many photographs of it. An open door, a floor of sand, the white flowering weeds that wend their way through tears in the window's mesh. The house is just one room enclosed by gray stone on four sides. Whatever roof there once was has rotted away, exposing the house's interior to the elements. I enter the room, but keep the door open. A Jesuit missionary named Matteo Ricci once tried to teach the Chinese how to remember. In his treatise on the mnemonic arts, written in Chinese, Ricci left instructions for how to build a memory palace, a structure for organizing the mind's wayward contents. One starts by visualizing a space, for instance, a room. The palace builder then furnishes his creation with objects and images, each of which shall serve as the anchor point for a memory. Ricci writes, "Once your places are all fixed in order, then you can walk through the door and make your start." I walk around the room trying to place its contents in order and to graft upon each a moment from my trip. In one corner, I see a lighter half buried in the sand, which I connect to a memory from yesterday, lying with Josh in the leaf litter amidst the Himalayan drift. I link the room's open entrance to the long hike that brought us here, the metal girders propped against one wall, to the city we'd recently exited. When I've filled the room with as many memories as I can, when I have turned it into my trip's palace, I head back to the hotel and pack my things. Shanghai. Jay was working the till at his cafe in the French concession when I walked in and ordered an Americano. It was raining outside, a deluge that had lasted for days. I sat shivering in my soaked linen shirt as he fixed me coffee and a bowl of mushroom soup. Afterwards, we made pleasantries and stared at one another. My mother says that Shanghai, for her, is Zhongshan Park in summertime, Yew Garden in winter, the view of a still rural Pudong from her side of the river. When I think of Shanghai, I think of the plane trees that line the streets of the French concession, their mottled bark tracing archipelagos of nude and umber, and the particular way their leaves cut in origami the light. On the same day I met Jay, I paid a visit to the Urban Planning Exhibition Center in People's Square, where I got to see an enormous room-sized model of Shanghai while listening to a cover of Moon River. All of the important landmarks, from the Oriental Pearl Tower to the China Art Museum, have been rendered here in miniature. The model's layout is even continually revised to reflect new construction. Major projects that have been approved by city planners but not yet started still appear on the map, as if holding space for the future. That night, Jay took me to a wine bar just off Yongkang Road. He told me about his partner, a man he loved, a man he'd moved to China for, but he was also careful to mention his partner was away on business. I told him of my travels, of where I'd been the week before and where I was headed the week after. We sat at the wine bar until it closed, waiting for either bravery or heedlessness to strike. Michel de Certeau writes of all those wanderers in the city, "They are no more inserted within a container than those Chinese characters speakers sketch out on their hands with their fingertips." I downed my glass of red and sketched my intentions on Jay's palm. He took me home on the back of his bike, my arms slung around his waist, my sandaled feet floating above yards of slick pavement. That season's long rain was finally ending, and so we carried it all back with us, the just-washed summer air, the bike's rickety musculature, the people sleeping and wanting above the street. We wrote the city, and the city wrote us free. Neverland. Some years ago, my friend Kristen invited me to an electronic music festival called Neverland. The festival was held at a place called Shengyu-sang, or Fairy Mountain. The music began on Friday afternoon and didn't stop until Sunday at dawn, when all of us packed up our tents and went down the mountain to sleep. At Neverland, there was no army of staff to disperse the mosh, no official sponsors, not even a printed schedule. I saw some beer kegs set up beside the dance floor, which was really just a muddy field, and a few tanks filled with nitrous. People from all over the world had come here to move their bodies in accordance with the festival's weekend-long song. Our collective style, a mishmash of jeweled headdresses, Disney cosplay, and Premier League kits. When the clouds started rolling, actually rolling up the slope and over the stage, I thought of it as nature's fog machine and kept on dancing. Laser lights diffused in the mist, mud splatter Rorschached my torso. Every now and then, an opening would appear in the cloud cover, revealing balsa wood kites constructed to look like dragons, their bodies connected by invisible cords to some dancer far below. The club. I'm 20 and have one calf hooked around a pole in a renovated World War II era bunker in Shanghai. I'm 26 and waiting in line to pee at Petticoat Lane in Hong Kong. I'm 26 again in Berlin, outside on the rooftop looking up at the TV tower and babbling to a boy from Dubai about Isherwood and Aden. I'm 22 on the dance floor at Termix in Prague. I'm on the cusp of 24 at the End Up in San Francisco, the back end of 25 at Blake's in Atlanta. I'm at Toilet Club and Akbar and Machine. I'm at Industry. I'm at Therapy. I'm at Mixed Nuts and Nelly's and Underground and Moim. I'm at Club Cafe in Boston. Cover is 10 and closes at 2. I'm 17 and it's finally the first time. The club is called the Carousel. Inside, Ellen, Aaron, and I dance in a sunken pit ringed by watchful men, all three of us chanting the lyrics to a song by Juvenile. We will charm a sickly sweet drink from one of these men, and then we will go upstairs and watch the drag queens perform, their padded hips and painted faces showing us how. Before any of this can begin, though, I must hand my ID to the butch at the lectern with the binder full of underage faces. They put a bracelet on my wrist, gently, as one might apply a Band-Aid, and then nudge me toward the first of so many doors. Chicago. As I write this, it's June 2021 in Chicago, Pride Month. I'm here to be the best man at my straight brother's wedding and then to watch his cat while he honeymoons. My brother has lived in Boys Town, America's oldest gayborhood, for most of the past decade. Before leaving on their trip, the newlyweds gift me 1 joint, 2 MDMA pills, and a note that reads, "Thank you, have fun." Even with their blessing, I do not go out to the bars, all of which are open again. I spend my days like I used to, walking up and down the city's long vertebral column. Because it's Pride Month, there are rainbow dog bones being sold in Wrigleyville, rainbow flags flapping outside the Macy's downtown, rainbow mood lighting cast by the Ferris wheel at Navy Pier, an entire city aglow with bent and wonky light. Across the street from where my brother was wed, I see a billboard swarming with the names of different queer subreddits, from r/gaybros to r/non-binary. Reddit's accompanying slogan, "Maybe you'll find yourself among people like you." Just a few blocks west from where I'm writing this is Boys Town's Legacy Walk, a series of rainbow and gold pylons honoring queer luminaries of the past. Each pylon looks kind of like a rocket, and you can imagine the whole fleet lifting off when Pride is over, taking Freddie Mercury and Audre Lorde to the moon. A few blocks east from where I'm writing this is Lake Michigan. I walk there each morning to see where the Belmont Rocks used to be, that cruisy shoreline of sun-baked boulders where Edmund White once pressed his glossy shoulder against a lover's silky thigh. Not far from there is Keith Haring's self-portrait, a sculpture of a planar, genderless figure which stands alone in Chicago's AIDS garden. In his book, Cruising Utopia, the theorist Jose Esteban Munoz writes about a blowjob Haring gave to the artist John Giorno inside a New York City bathroom sometime in 1982. The same bathroom, perhaps, where White's narrator in his novel, The Beautiful Room is Empty, went to experience his own moment of surrender. I'm writing this because I still want to surrender to the circuits of queer feeling that surge in these spaces, because these circuits have wired me, for better or for worse, making me turn on and off in all the ways that I do. I'm writing this because a friend of mine died last December, and the last time we said without words that we loved each other was in a gay club in New York that's since gone under. And the last time before that was in another city, another room not long for this world. Rooms came alive when my friend was alive in them. Cambridge. In the beginning, the room is always empty, and wait. The door opens, a boy walks in, and then exits when he's ready. What Baldwin wrote is this: I will not forget the last time he looked at me. The morning light filled the room, reminding me of so many mornings and of the morning I had first come there. Us two in the mirror, an image only visible in that space. In the beginning, the room is built to be left, but empty space is still heavy with something, and walls stripped of decorations still retain. I hold the room open, bring visitors by for days or weeks at a time. The room moves with me when I move, stays still in my repose. Martin, New York, Tucson, Chengdu. We seldom take breaks from each other, this room and I. We warm up for the friends who drop by unexpectedly. We make new sentences when we can. A man eventually takes joint custody of the room, and each year the lease is renewed. In the room we share right now, one wall is entirely a mirror, and every morning the mirror's beveled seams diffract the light, dropping rainbows on our duvet. The room is not as lonely as when I entered it. These four walls I've submitted to, this room in which I remember, this room that does my remembering. Neither of us has decided to leave just yet. The water is about to boil, the sofa set up for tomorrow's guests. I tell whoever will listen to stay the course of your indecision. I tell them about the room and how in its most beautiful hours, it's full. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I hope you're enjoying the Writers Series. My name is Kaylee Grande, and I'm a freshman here at Wazoo, and I'm studying English education. I'm one of the 3 interns for the Writers Series, and this is such an amazing opportunity to market and public speak. I really love it. And I'm so excited to see all the hard work that we put into this event come to life. I'm even more excited to introduce Alexandra Teague. Alexandra Teague is the author of Spinning Teacups, a mythical American memoir, and the poetry collection Ominous Music Intensifying, which was recently selected by the New York Times poetry editor as a recommended title. She is previously the author of 3 books of poetry and novel, as well as the co-editor of Bullets into Bells, Poets and Citizens Respond to Gun Violence, a former recipient of the fellowships from Cittadella Ranieri and the NEA. She is a professor of creative writing and chair of English at the University of Idaho. Without further ado, it's an honor to introduce Alexandra Teague.
Thank you so much for that. And thank you all for all the hard work that you put into this event and everybody for coming out tonight. And you can tell I'm the luckiest person in the world because those are my colleagues and friends you just heard from, and they're just immensely talented. I'm going to open with a poem from my newish book, Ominous Music Intensifying, that takes on the American patriotic song, The Battle Hymn of the Republic. A number of poems in this book take patriotic songs and recontextualize them in relation to different contemporary events, and this one brings in some gun violence and other subjects. But it opens with a mistake. I love the Battle Hymn of the Republic. I don't know if anybody else was forced to sing patriotic songs every morning in school, but I was in elementary school. Yeah, okay. And I loved the Battle Hymn of the Republic, but I thought that it was "My Knives Have Seen the Glory" that I was singing all the time, and then I eventually learned it was "Mine Eyes," and so it starts there. Mine eyes have seen the glory. Admitting I've never stopped wanting the misheard line, my knives, those blades graced with handles and sight. About glory, who knew anything in kindergarten? At best, a plastic bucket of chlorine water dumped over my head. Apocalyptic, I didn't know the word yet, and baptismal. Atheist child, this was the closest I would get. Pool tiles in cool Texas morning, the swim teacher shocking us into submission, bravery, freedom, glory, whole countries of abstraction I only saw with mine eyes ringing, winging, stinging water, I mean, with my body and its sudden blindness in the face of. About this country, who gets to dive and rise and who gets trampled like the vintage, I still can't see the justice at 43. Mad Men keep singing on TV. It's all an act. Those children never died for real. New mouths keep mouthing. We're praying for the victims' families. We are praying. This is freedom. We used to sing facing the flag like it could hear us. We used to sing His Truth is Marching. We once held ice cubes shaped like Texas in a Texas schoolroom where no one shot us. Just water dripping from our fingers. Glory, glory to the playground hippopotamus with its rusting springs we bounced on. Glory to the air a child leaves and then returns to. My knives have seen the pool head first, the concrete, the drain's dark suction, but then the bubbling back, sweet surface breaking. Hallelujah to the desks, shaped like desks a child has no reason to dive beneath. The fiery gospels of cinnamon Jolly Ranchers, the trumpets of ice cream cones, then Texas melting down to clean our fingers. About naivete and 1980, we were all midair, headlong, this country heading where it's gone, as the saying goes, if we don't change direction. My jubilant feet above my head, with you my grace shall deal, as I hit the pool water. Let us die, let us die, let us dive to make men free. We used to sing upside down. We used to face the flag like it could see us. as we builded him an altar, as he sifted our hearts like playground sand into a bucket. We never ask, what if he or he or he loosed the fateful lightning? There were sides, straight as stripes on the flag. We were the future, sang Whitney Houston. We were the world, sang Michael Jackson. If our eyes got rusty, someone, glory, glory, would polish them, wouldn't they, until we reflected stars. Another theme that recurs through this book is the rough beast, who, as many of you will know, is a figure who appears in William Butler Yeats's famous poem, The Second Coming. And the rough beast is this apocalyptic figure that is slouching towards Bethlehem at the end of the poem. But in my version of the rough beast, I imagine him as this apocalyptic figure who is misunderstood. It's not his fault that society has gone the directions it's gone. He's trapped in these circumstances too and is trying to figure out what's going on. So this is called The Rough Beast Takes a Painting Class. And I wasn't actually planning on reading it until I walked into this room and was like, well, obviously. So I love this museum so much, so I should have thought of this before. And it's got an epigraph from Alexis de Tocqueville's Democracy in America, which says, the surface of American society is covered with a layer of democratic paint, but from time to time, one can see the old aristocratic colors breaking through. The rough beast takes a painting class. The teacher says white is not truly a color, containing as it does all wavelengths of visible light. She says the rough beast's claws might be useful later for sgraffito, to scratch back through to what's beneath, cyan and magenta, Goldman Sachs and Donald Trump. The teacher says Trump is not a color, but everyone knows he's on the wheel between Versailles Mirror Hall and rosebush with limp orange petals and a shitstorm of thorns. All the brush's bristles are made of his hair. It's hard to keep the paint from clumping. The best color wheel is segregated into swaths, no way to spin it like a twister spinner, blue, violet, tangerine, charcoal, forest teal, yellow. No way to step on two colors with the same foot at once. The teacher says there is no color called keep out, although the beast has seen it. In pointillism, the world sieves into so many tiny dots, 1,000 points of light, until it's hard to tell which dot, amid the swan boat dot, parasol dot, lakes with a golf course dot, is democracy. She shows battleships dazzle-painted in cubist camouflage, black and white angles and stripes like a flotilla of zebras. This was supposed to confuse torpedoes. She doesn't say if the lesson shows the limits of deception or imagination. She arranges a still life to keep everything still, a peacock's hues simmered down to 2 glimmering feathers, a skull resting loudly by a fruit bowl. No one would eat a Cezanne apple, she explains, meaning people want realism more than truth. Good apples do not complain about the light that hits them. So, whether your politics agree with mine or not, I hope we can all agree on one thing, which is that thrift stores are wonderful. And this next poem is called America the Beautiful Thrift Store. And I'm sorry if you don't like thrift stores or my politics, but this is where we are. And this takes lines from the patriotic song America the Beautiful and reimagines what I think of as a better and more capacious and embracing version of this country. America the Beautiful Thrift Store. It's not that one person's junk is another's treasure, but that all this junk just is. Like an America that doesn't hide its size 12 3-inch heels, red glitter-crusted, swaggering even on the holy metal shelf, but mingles learned C++ with light erotica. Women in masks meeting men in masks in castles with masks of fog, where fog is sexy instead of picnic pathetic. And no one shivers because the racks are jammed with coats until the hangers snap, fake fur-trimmed collars and hoods fluffed out like Santa dolls suited for an Arctic rave, fuzzy gloves with pom-poms and pockets with real dimes for free, and ticket stubs to movies that sound like a good idea of your past, like maybe that night got lost when this coat did, and now you have your hands in its silk lining like you were born here in this America, where everyone is safe as plastic tumblers and Day-Glo salad spinners, and no one cares if you walk the aisles in 2 different shoes, like the man in that children's book, with so many caps on caps on caps on his head, you remember no more story but this. Like America the Beautiful was only ever purple mountains crammed so hard the paper wrapping had to be peeled back because patriotism meant sacrificing monarchs and thrones and majesty and one color to rule them all. Because it was always mixed up what was fantasy and real and beautiful and what had to work hard but pretended not to, like the man in the size 12 heels calling, "Girl, how do these look?" would never tell you walking in this country is free, but walks on anyway, the kitchenware aisle a runway, spice racks and cutting boards painted with tiny amber waves of grain. So it's not true you only remember purple. There are shining seas and fruited plains on cups everyone's grandmother died to leave here. The past, reflecting back into now, in a closet mirror bungeed to the racks, and the purses empty of everyone's fear of losing. That majesty of the already gone but refillable, like a bin of hats, which maybe was the whole story, how the man carried all of them with him, like a country that erects monuments not only for presidents, but also for this man was lynched here and now there's a swing set. The true story of every broken thing until now, and someone paying at the register for a bag of it. And no one saying blue tags can't be 50% off, and no one driving in a Hummer, and no one saying braided straps on purses are passé, or torn cover paperbacks are not a type of sock. Some Sunday, no one noticing you rummaging in the evening gown's dust ruffles, for what you can't believe is, but is this pair of heels. The Statue of Liberty floating in each plastic wedge, cloudy glitter raining around her island. When you shake them, when you step into them, strap the coral plastic straps. America, in exactly your size. And how, girl, did you ever walk before this? She has a tiny torch. She's calling everyone, no matter how tired or poor, between the linoleum and your purple painted toenails, to just go ahead and rise. I truly had those wonderful heels with the Statue of Liberty in them, and then the water eventually got so cloudy that you couldn't see the Statue of Liberty. Could also be a metaphor, but anyway, I threw them out, and then years later I wrote that poem, and then now I don't have the shoes to wear as I'm reading it, but I have other thrift store shoes. Okay, I'm gonna read 2 more poems. This changes gears entirely, but I wanted to read it because I talked to Jamie's class, and we had fun talking about patterns earlier today, and this is a very patterny poem. Any of you who have ever lost something will maybe relate to the experience of looking for it and thinking that every other thing you see is that lost item, and so this poem circles around circles and my husband losing his wedding ring, and it's called Eclipses for Dylan. After you lose your wedding ring, everything turns into circles. Silver rivets puckering our bed frame, a quarter clanging in the dryer, bottle caps, key ring in a shirt pocket, 1 bolt against the car's kettle chip crushed carpet. Your fingers digging into grit, trying to match the perfect holes of where, when, like finding the sky's 1 blue through a cyanometer. A circle for the air, a ring of shades, lighter to darker, but the clouds keep moving. The sky is dimming, brightening unpredictably. You are kneeling at the parking meter grass. I am kneeling with a flashlight, silver rivets, filthy carpet, dimes beneath the driver's seat. It is less gone if we are always looking. 1 week ago, everyone stared at the familiar sky through Nassau glasses. The radio warned, you can go blind in just an instant. White crescent shadows climbed every tree trunk. We thought we knew where the sky was. Sometimes it hurts to love anything this fiercely. The moon is just an object. The sun is just an object behind an object. A shoebox can turn the sky inside out. I have looked in one. I do not understand it, really. Time has one perfect hole for the day we stood on a rocky beach vowing forever. Rocks under my heels, your oxblood boots, our fingers. You have dug through banana peels, eggshells, coffee filters crushed like midden. You are checking inside the yellow plastic gloves you've worn, like you could have lost it inside their fingers while you were looking. We are vowing with each thought, drain soap, olive oil at the co-op, bottleneck, zipper, pocket seam, wad of paper. We mean love, 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 I think, but we're too close to see it. Once, I saw a ring of feathers in a county museum in the Ozarks. Angel's crown or death crown, said the index card typed up beside it. A sign from God that forms inside your feather pillow when you go up to heaven. Or a sign of the witchcraft that has killed you. I didn't expect to feel afraid when the sun started leaving. What has existed still exists somewhere, says some theory. Any symbol is just a symbol. I am circling words in the dictionary in my mind, places, places, places. You have turned the mattress on its edge to shake out sheets we have washed and shaken. I have never seen the feathers in my own pillow. Some things should not be stared into directly. Knife drawer, cat food, Q-tip box, plastic produce bags. It is all we can talk about. Memory is irresponsible. One day we'll wake oblivious again to the rivets that hold this bed together. We'll drop potato chips by accident beneath the bucket seats on car trips, wrinkled shadows of golden fields spreading out below us, your hands on the steering wheel as we make fun of our own jokes, then circle back to laughing. What else did I ever mean? I should reach across to hold your hand, just my fingers against your fingers. And I'll end with a poem that I wanted to read because it straddles the line between fiction, nonfiction, and poetry. And in conversations with Cameron before this reading, we were talking about the fact that many of us write in multiple genres. And so this is a prose poem, and it's based partly on my actual childhood in Texas, but it's also a fable, sort of. You can figure out, maybe, which parts are not so real. Lone Star State. It's true I've never ridden a mechanical bull, although in Texas in the 1980s, they were the official state animal. And everyone who didn't arrive at the pinch-toed, penny-loafered private school in a BMW driving Miss Daisy chauffeured was required to arrive on bucking fiberglass, bolted to lower middle class, like a badly welded Piggly Wiggly cart, squeaking and kicking one wheel back, petulant in the cereal aisle. The inanimate world, not inanimate at all, but animated by money we didn't have. You know this already. We were the ones in sandals at the ice rink edge as people circled imported winter on delicate blades. So to get to that school with invisible gates, that school named Country Day, like a country club where most kids had a smarter father, mother, older sibling, legacy making up for test scores, the future's SAT scandals in Fabergé embryo. I had to pin myself to a bull's stiff electric back, clutch its horns like Kevin Costner clutched his floodlit dream in that movie. We could all reach anything, though some of us rode to school in Oldsmobiles with one black door, though the car was green. The slickness and danger just part of the fun, the longhorned capitalism, Reagan's ride a bull to school, as people maybe had on the frontier everyone pretended to be descended from, deep in the heart of our starry clap, clap, clap state. How, you ask, did I ever slip through that school's gateless gate if I didn't know the secret? Lean forward, grip your dominant hand hard, sit up straight. Like most American rules, a little contradictory. Straight and forward and up and down, and if it's true, I was afraid. A counterfeit cowgirl, lassoless, loaferless, penniless, read, scholarshiped and ranchless. Though the stockyard bulls in my barrio snorted hotly at their steakhouse futures, my family's vegetarianism illegal too in 1980s Texas, where each child had to dissect a longhorn like frogs in other smaller states. And how in this world, you ask, did I not starve in a dust storm, not break my neck like a drunk in a honky-tonk, not lose my mind like Letty in that 1920s silent film, The Wind, where sand blows endlessly through slat walls of West Texas, wind so powerful it appears as rearing broncos she can see above her in the sky? Did I say I didn't, that I don't some days feel cloud-kicked, fallen from something I never learned to ride? Thank you.
Thank you all so much. We're going to do some questions now, a little Q&A, and I fear if they sit up here, though, Bill, maybe they won't be seen by the cameras. We got a drone or something that can fly around, and I know we do. So maybe everyone can sit up there, but when you answer a question, maybe you can stand up. I'm going to run this around to whoever has questions and hand you the microphone. Anyone want to get us started? That was an embarrassment of riches, though, let me just say, for starters. Embarrassment of riches. Thanks so much for being here, all of you. Wonderful. Yeah, all right, Gabby. Yeah. Okay, they can stay seated. Okay. You can stay seated, but you'll turn your microphones on, Gabby.
Hi. I was just wondering, what do you do when you have like writer's block or feel unmotivated to write? Like if you have any like tips and like tricks you do to get out of that?
Okay. Tips or tricks? If you were in Peter's nonfiction class earlier, I think this is just a repeat because I got this question, and my answer for writer's block is basically when I'm writing, I depend on routine. Basically, I depend on something outside of me to discipline me into being a better writer than I am. And I think when I hit writer's block, like many normal people, I despair and I usually feel like giving up. But as long as I've sort of set down I'm also a runner. I think I'm one of these people who I have a lot of faith in sort of artificial structures I've created to help me get through something that I cannot myself get through. So I really just depend on, when I'm writing, I'm very strict about routine, and I get very honestly kind of superstitious about what I eat for breakfast that day, or I just try and do the same thing. And so even if my mind and heart is feeling wilted by the writer's block, there is this kind of vehicle I've made already in my apartment that will carry me through it, and that's how I think about it, at least.
I think my answer will be a bit of a repeat too if you were in Jamie's class earlier, but I read other people's work. I was talking about my former colleague Kim Barnes saying that sometimes we just need to fill the well. There's not always something in the well, so sometimes writer's block has to do with needing to just take in other things, and it doesn't have to be just reading. It can be going for a walk or a run or whatever. So just doing other things, continuing to live into the situation, and also continuing to sometimes return to older drafts. I look through files where I have things that I've abandoned because sometimes something that I didn't know what to do with earlier will suddenly spark something. So I don't always have to have a new idea. I'm not just starting with a blank page.
Your question is a good one. I'm not really sure how to answer it. I'm pretty good at writing, but I think I have talent block more than writer's block. I'm good at sitting down and doing it, but the older I get, the less I care about how good the writing is in a draft, and I think that's a superpower. And so I write a lot, and with no expectation that it's going to be even halfway good to even me. So William Stafford, the poet, famously said you should lower your standards, and I finally think I understand what that means, which is to not put the pressure on yourself to be Wallace Stevens or Toni Morrison. You can just write a couple bad sentences, but that's still writing, and you still move the needle forward. But what's also true, thinking back to a conversation I had earlier, is that when you're starting out in writing, a one failed poem could be 50% of your entire writing life. And now that I'm almost 50, one bad poem is nothing. So it hurts less the more you age along, and the percentage of failure that one page is nothing by the time you're half a century years old and 30 away from being dead. So it's not that bad not to do a good job. But I remember being 19, 20, and I'd write and not get a good page or a good poem or anything for many weeks, and it was a totality of failure. It was 100% of my writing life was a failure. And maybe taking the time machine forward, going back to the future, things get a lot easier for failing. Failing becomes a lot more productive the more you practice is something, I think. Sorry, that was a very windy answer. But it's a tricky question, I think, because it feels different now than it used to.
Thanks, y'all. You have a question, sir? I saw your hand.
When you're writing, do you ever feel like it's difficult to write because everything that's worth writing has already been written before? Is it difficult to get the motivation when, sometimes you don't have it? I mean, and then how do you get that motivation? Sometimes do you wait for it to come, or do you schedule on Tuesday at 3:00?
Okay. I think I'll piggyback on what Mike was saying to the last. I think I struggle with not trying to write like Wallace Stevens or like the lowering my expectations. Though I try with that, but with this question about like a dream of maybe originality or of like, or rather the fear that you might be writing something that has already been written or that someone else has, I actually have very little like emotions tied to that. I don't know what it is. I think I came into writing with low standards for myself in terms of originality, and I think it served me well, because I find that would be, in my mind, even more paralyzing to think that everything I write has to be unique and different. And maybe this does connect back to just maybe some kind of like boring broadband humanist sense that like, of course, everything that I would write, especially as a creative nonfiction writer where you're writing about lives, like I feel like every life has been lived and is being lived over and over again. And most of the time when I'm writing, I'm just trying to touch on not even the like pure individualism, but like to like it's actually a privilege to try and connect to that oneness of what has already been written before and the stories that have already been lived. And that's super cheesy, but I think because that's part of what gives me the desire to write. I've just never had that. I mean, I understand it, and maybe in terms of form or things like that, I can maybe get hung up on like, let's try and do it new. But the underlying story itself, I try and not worry at all whether or not it's been told before, because I kind of know and firmly believe it has.
Other questions? Yeah. Oh, yeah. All right. Saw one here and then, okay.
Hi. Okay. So question. We've talked in our classes about like, moving between genres or kind of like, taking elements of all of them, especially like I'm thinking of in class today talking about like writing a poem with the lens of nonfiction or fiction. And so I'm wondering how you guys in your primary genres, what are some of the elements you take from the secondary genres to like bring into your pieces, or maybe reframe how you're thinking about something that you're writing?
That's a great question. I think that when I started writing poetry years ago, I thought of it as much more akin to nonfiction, although I didn't write nonfiction. I was terrified of writing nonfiction at the time because it just seemed like I would have sort of like agoraphobia. I'd be out in this open space and it's like, I could say absolutely anything. Like I like the fact that the concision of poetry means that I have, even if I write a longer poem, I'm still not going to say everything about that subject, so nonfiction just felt overwhelming in that way to me, but I definitely thought of my poems as much more nonfictional. I didn't understand, honestly, why people invented things wholesale and had like characters in their poems. And so this has been something that I have come to and surprised myself with in the past few books, that I started working in some persona poems, and that eventually slipped to these other sort of poems where I had sort of wholesale characters or something as metaphoric ways of working out things that feel emotionally true to me but did not exactly happen in that way. And so definitely the fiction writer part of my brain gets to be activated now when I do that.
Your question is good. I spent a long time in my life saying to myself, I'm a poet, or I only read poems, only write poems, which wasn't true because I read novels and did other things, but in my mind, that's what I said. And it wasn't until my early 30s, I was having a beer with another writer, Skip Horak, who's a dear friend, and he said something that was so profound to me. And he was just like, you know what I like about writing? You can just do whatever you want. And you can write any book about anything, and it's just absolutely limitless. And he was talking about genre, not his own genre, which is fiction. And he's like, a writer is someone who writes about stuff. And then we were prattling on about Graham Greene at the time. And I don't know why it was so impactful in that moment, but a little switch went off for me, and I was like, oh yeah, I am a writer. I'm not just a poet. And I think it was just an ontological exercise more than anything else of like, what is the thing I actually do? How do I define it? And I'm sure a lot led up to that. And then I was like, well, you know what I like about fiction? It can be funny. You know what I like about nonfiction? It can think. And it took me a long time to incorporate thinking, or like maybe being a little introspective or philosophical, and multi-tonal sort of dramatic representations of the way people talk and all that kind of stuff, or vernacular speech into my own writing. And because I always just associate it with the things that I sought out in different genres. And I was like, no, it's just writing. So I think I was my own worst enemy in terms of thinking about genre. And then just kind of looking at the forest for the trees, I think you see, of course, all the examples of all those things in any genre. But I think it's mostly writers who box themselves in, not genres, in my opinion.
My question is, if you were to write about something that you don't agree with, but the assignment is to write about something that you have to write in a way that you actually support what you don't agree with, how would you write about that, and how would you go about that?
I have an answer. I write a lot about where I'm from, and I have a lot of friends and family members whose worldviews are not mine, and mine is not theirs. But I meet them on the page as complex human beings. And I think a lot of art is really about just about empathy, about human understanding. And I think those questions maybe, I would never say to myself, I'm now going to sit down and write about someone whose views I don't agree with. I do that all the time when I write about X, Y, or Z person in my life or past. But I think it's just, I think the human story is pretty strange, honestly. And I think about my neighbors in Idaho who have a key to my house and get my mail. I know they don't think like I do when it comes to who they vote for and what they do on Sundays, and what I don't do on Sundays. And I don't know, I just think of like the neighbor as being the metaphor for that. Like, how do you greet your neighbor? You know, how do you think about the human story? A lot of art that's didactic or polemical to me feels like a celebration only of the person writing it, which is quite dull, frankly, regardless of the person. That's just, you're asking kind of a homework question, but I think it's has a broader implication for any writer writing about anything. It's a great question.
Saw a couple other hands over here.
Hi, I'm familiar with all of your work, and I've heard all of you read before, and something occurred to me tonight that I was interested in listening to your work with a fiction writer's ear. That's sort of a follow-up to the question about cross-genre, multi-genre work. And that is that I noticed tonight that I feel really placed in time and in space with, I don't know if it's just the coincidence of these selections or if you like set this up, but I'm really curious about, how do I want to word this? Because it's something we've never talked about before, but like, what is the role of setting in your process, right? Like, time, place, duration feels significant this evening in what I'm hearing from all of you. And is that early, is that late, or is there a specific poem or part of the essay that you read that you can point to that we can kind of understand, like, at what point was I thinking about locating my work in a way that, for example, a fiction writer might? Does that make sense? I need at this point for Mike to say that is a good question, because you've said it 4 times.
I think that's a great question, Leah. I mean, I was thinking about this even a little bit when, Alexandra, you were reading the wedding ring poem, which also I need to know, was the wedding ring found?
The wedding ring kind of mysteriously reappeared in Dylan's studio. So, yeah.
Okay.
It wasn't exactly found. It appeared.
Because there's this imagery of the eclipse and of this kind of like, almost like, setting is maybe not even the right word, but like this kind of Titanic cosmic thing that was happening. And I was thinking about how I had also written at some point, and I didn't read it, but there's like an eclipse scene in one of my essays that is set in Tennessee. And I don't know where you were watching the eclipse, but I think like setting, especially this like kind of, I was listening to you read the poem and thinking about how, I don't know if I would say it's where I begin, but it's like it's like the most immediate way to create connection in my mind between like sometimes my own personal character or perspective and the broader kind of topic or context that I'm trying to reach toward. And I felt like that eclipse, I was just thinking about that when you're writing the poem, and it's kind of like just like, oh, we were all humans at that point, going through certain experiences in our own very located worlds while also looking up and having this other spatial experience with something I did not understand what was happening, but like a lot of the images like resonated with me, right? So I don't know if this really answers it so much as like it is such a like that generates a sort of train of thought always for me, is like thinking about place and how these kind of events that draw us into our bodies, into place, but that are also shared across, I mean, I assume you were not in Tennessee, you were far, far away. So yeah, I don't know. I think setting as a connection always works as a way to get me writing.
I think it's just a theme I'm obsessed with. I mean, my first book of poetry is called Mortal Geography and has a map, which is a collage of a lot of places that were important to my family on the cover. And my mother was born in far northern New York State and then felt very displaced to Arizona after her father's death in the South Pacific during World War II. And then I grew up in Texas, and then our house burned, and then I was in the Ozark Mountains of Arkansas, and then I've been in all these other states. And so for me, it's just this sort of obsession with trying to locate oneself and understand self in relation to place and layers of sort of history and family in relation to place. So I think it's very central and something that I gravitate towards. I'm also realizing, I don't know if I should say this, I don't want to take credit at all for the genius on either side of me, but I mean, I was on both of their hiring committees, so you might also be hearing that the UI creative writing program has some leanings in this direction, maybe partly I'm realizing at this moment because I've been there a while and I gravitate. I don't know. I mean, I love Thomas's work, partly because it is obsessed with mapping and some of the same questions. And Mike is place-based in a different sort of way, I think. I mean, because you have a very particular landscape that you return to so often in your poems. Like, you're not as many different places in your placing. I don't know. How do you think about that?
It's a great question, Leah. When I was, I think about this a lot in terms of how I came to discover writing, because when I started writing, I thought, like many people do, the things around me don't go in art. I grew up in a logging town. I grew up outside of a logging town in an old logging camp on a subsistence farm. And I thought, who wants to hear about the gravel driveway that I stare at all day? No one. It doesn't go in a poem. Other things go in a poem. And when I was in, as an undergrad, I also felt that kind of code switching when I went to a big state school. Because I'd say where I'm from, and people would be like, Jesus, you know, that would be like the answer. Not like, oh, that's nice. It's nice down there. I'd be, God. And I think internalizing that it made me think, well, I need just the razzle dazzle. I need to sound like Wallace Stevens. I need to be disembodied. I need to be adrift out in, the sort of palaces of language. And a great teacher, Dorian Locks, who took me aside after class one day, and she said, Jesus, all you do is shoot off fireworks, but you don't write about anything. And if you maybe did that, you might be good at writing. But as is, you're just good at dancing around. And I didn't quite understand what she meant, honestly. And I was like, well, what do you mean? Like, I'm making art. Like, that is the thing. That is meaning. And she was like, well, you don't write about anything. You write words down. You use figurative language. You're good at making similes for the moon. But no one cares. And I understood immediately and suddenly what that meant. And I wrote a really bad little poem about my dad getting laid off from the mill. It's in my first book. And no, it's not bad. It's just not great. But it was the most important poem of the 20th century for me, personally, because it opened up this idea that the place, the home place, and the people there were the subjects of art. And it was writing became so meaningful. It was fun before, but it became meaningful then. And it was because place happened to be the thing that I was most attached to. I felt chained to it, I think, in college, socially. And then I felt liberated through art because of it. Not to sound too romantic about it, but then it made writing like just an endless search to try to write about a place that I understood people thought was a dump, or a place you didn't want to be from, or of a tax bracket you looked to be away from. So that's a good question.
We got time for one more here.
Hi guys. I wanted to ask you about friendships with other artists, whether in your field or not. Specifically, what is the role of art friends with your work or your identity as an artist?
I feel like I'm being trolled because in my class I'm having the students make art friendships and then write these assignments that are about what it means to be friends through art or around art. And some of them have been going to museums and writing about it and things like that. So, wow, I mean, your question has served its purpose in that in putting me on the spot, I feel like I don't know exactly what to say about this. I mean, I'll just talk about the reading, I guess. I think that, the one friend that I mentioned who passed was an art friend. And, I think it's too simple to say that with friends living or dead that sometimes these people haunt your work. I think that's almost too dramatic language for it. But I do feel when I'm writing, even if I'm not addressing someone, even if they don't show up in the essay, that I am kind of writing with that person beside me. And that was the friend who was kind of beside me when I was writing that essay. I'm not someone who has always had a really consistent writing group or a really just close-knit writing community. I was lucky enough to go to a great MFA where I met lots of people, but we all kind of dispersed, and that community sometimes feels more like just email tag a lot of the time or something like that. But in my work, it is always helpful. I don't even always show it to these people. I probably should, but they're there with me when I'm writing it.
Can I give a little follow-up answer to that? Because friendships with other types of artists are incredibly important to my process because they help me see what's possible in the medium of language and words differently. And so I've done a lot of interdisciplinary collaborations with dancers, with visual artists, with musicians. I'm married to a musician. I think about musical structure in relation to poetry. I don't know how to write any type of music or play any type of music, but I think about, we have conversations back and forth across our different art forms. And one of my best friends in the world. As many of you know, Stacey Eisenbarger, the incredible visual artist and art professor at UI, died recently, and she was somebody who I always had process conversations with, because even though she worked as a sculptor and I worked as a writer, we were often asking the same kinds of questions and trying to figure out how to do those in each of our media. And so I think those kinds of process conversations can often be even more powerful than conversations directly like workshopping the work itself. So
I like your question. I think of, the older I've gotten, to me, the most profound relationships in my life are my friends in the arts, more so than my relationship with the art itself, which may sound strange. That's not the way I felt romantically about art when I was in my 20s and 30s, but it's the way I feel now. Because I think you're able to have, there's a shorthand you're able to have with other artists and especially people you trust with your conversation and opinions and complaints, that you can really get down to it. You can really get down to a deep, penetrating conversation about the stuff that makes art happen, which is really uncommon. Reading books is easy. Going to the gallery is easy. You can have these conversations with yourself, but they go only so far. And I do think, as with Alexandra, I think of many of my friends who work in other mediums. I think of my wife, who's a writer, and I just think, like, God, without these people, I think I would be so bored with my own ways of thinking or the way I strive to write that I don't think I'd keep going, really. Or I think I would lie to myself about how interesting I was, or how interesting I was to the genre. Whereas having a trusted set of friends allows you to experiment and to talk about the ideas behind things and get actual feedback from folks, which is way different than selling a bunch of books or getting a good review. That's marketplace fluff, But having a friend whose conversation you've carried on with for some time, read something and be like, God, you got to this thing we've been talking about for 20 years. That to me is something so meaningful that I would, if someone was like, you have to pick that conversation or writing more books, I pick the conversation every time, for sure, for what it's worth.
Thank you all so much for being here tonight. How about another round of applause? Yeah? Thank you, Mike, Alexandra, Thomas, Taya, Elise, Kaylee, thanks so much. Thank you all for being here. There are books for sale, courtesy of book people in the back of the room. Please come and say hi, buy a book, get it signed. We'll see you next time. Thanks. Have a good night.